and welcome back to the episode of International Immersion, a podcast where we seek to connect people, places, events, cultures, and ideas, and bring them together in a platform where people can learn about the world, each other, and all the aspects that make this world such an amazing place. For today's episode, we have a special guest who's had an interesting experience in working in a number of countries, but primarily Japan. So we're going to be discussing the work-related aspects of work culture and what it's like to work in Japan versus the U.S. today. So I would just like to welcome our guest today. It's great to have you on today, and I hope you've been doing well.
Thank you, Sean, for having me today.
So to begin with, it'd be great to hear a little bit about you, maybe a little bit of your background, and from talking to you, you seem to have a very interesting background with your work experience. So if you could give us a little information about maybe where you're, just whatever you want to say.
Okay. My name is Anna Hali. So Hani is Vietnamese. And Anna is someone picked that name for me in here, so it's easier to call. I was born in Vietnam, but I went to university in Japan, in Nagoya University. Then I worked for a Japanese company for several years after I graduated. I also traveled to several countries in Asia, like Singapore, Indonesia, and like multiple countries to experience more culture, like China, which is you have been. And after that, I went to America and get my MBA. After I got MBA, I got a job here, and that's me now for 5 years working in US. And during that 5 years, I have 1 year went back to Japan and worked for my headquarter company named Toyota Bullshit Group. That's one of the Toyota company making car for everyone. So my experience with several different countries, a little international, and I really expect to have some chance to share what's different culture or business life about Japan and US and other countries, how it's different. And I hope that will be helpful for anyone looking for some international experience like that.
No, I'm for certain that I think your experiences will be very useful to a lot of people who are contemplating or thinking about working abroad, or just having a change in their work life or experience. But that's pretty neat. So to get this straight, so you're from Vietnam, but you've worked in Vietnam, Japan, and the U.S. now, and you're currently here in the U.S., and that's great. And congrats on getting your MBA here as well. But that has to be very interesting, having being from one country, then going to another for education, then working, and then going to another for education, and then working again. That has to be a very unique experience, or I would say a unique set of experiences for you.
Right. So I studied Japanese when I was in university, and I have so much experience working with Japanese customer, and I have a good business in Vietnam too. I thought maybe my life just only end up with working with Japan and that's it. But I did not know that after 5 years graduate, I went to America. It's totally different, so far away, like 12 hours different, and so many culture different that I had to learn every day to get used to it.
And as you mentioned, as someone who's lived overseas as well in China for 4 years, I definitely can sympathize with that. Going from a place where you're used to everything to a place where everything is different, or a large number of things are different, it definitely takes some getting used to. And I've found from my experiences, some people do better than others in that transition phase, or their entire time they're in another place. But kind of getting into the background of the episode tonight, we discussed and compiled a list of aspects that are, I think, worthy of discussion and breaking down to kind of specifically kind of see what the differences are between the U.S. and Japan, because you've had your longest periods of working experience from what you've been telling me in these two countries here. So as mentioned, I think they're all interesting elements. And so to begin with, kind of a little bit of background. So I would just say to start off with, can you give us a little background about just like working in the U.S. versus Japan? This is going to lead into our main points, but just maybe a little could start us off like a general background or something that maybe kind of struck you or gives you kind of more this is what I associate with working here, or this is what I generally associate working there?
So in general, there's some difference between working in each country. If someone from outside of Japan, if they look in Japan and look at the TV, will see, oh, work life, like, so people, how people dress, how people getting busy every day. If you see the Shibuya, the crossing, the one that the most crowded, the crowded in the world. You see people how busy they are. They cross the road and they wear suits, very formal, different dress. Why in America, I don't see that's much popular.
So you could say it's more casual here.
More casual, yes.
No, I definitely agree. Just from looking at general kind of like paradigms of looking at people working in Japan, going to work versus here, there definitely are some differences. Yeah, I definitely agree with you there.
So there's so many things to describe a business culture of each country, but from the thing that you can see first, or when you observe, or you don't have to work there, but you can notice is if you go to the train station every day in Japan, you will see, oh, so many people wearing suits, like even men and women. And even in summertime, it's very hot. Like, man, these people not getting hot. Like, I'm still like, why do they have to dress nice like that? Everyone. So
Yeah,
you can
thinking
see
to
like people
yourself,
at
my
train
God, they
station.
look nice, but they must be suffering.
Maybe like they look even nicer than TV. So it just amazed me about how they really care about appearance. Why in America here, when I go to work every day, especially if I don't have an important event or like seeing customer or going to snowry something, I don't really have to worry about what I wear. It's more important about like how you really funny you are, how easy to approach you are, or how confident you have at work instead of how you wear.
I see.
Yeah.
So these are, you could say, these are some of the kind of the business for the business culture, some differences. Where Japan seems to be much more formal and more appearance driven, whereas here it's more about maybe more relatability, being down to earth. How can you associate with people, your confidence, your abilities, and what you know. You could say.
Right.
That doesn't surprise me.
Mm-hmm.
Like from my experience in China, it definitely the appearance fact element is also a similarity with people dress formally for business, but I can definitely relate on that. But yeah, from working here in the U.S. and being in the U.S. and being from the U.S., I definitely agree with you that like working from home now during the time of COVID, some days I never get out of my pajamas, for example, because I don't have any meetings or anything. Still get my work done, but it's definitely not ideal, but it's not hurting anyone or anything because I'm home and I'm not doing anything. Now, if I have a meeting or something on Zoom, of course I'll spruce up, but I'm not going to dress in a suit and sit in my computer in my office all day. And that kind of leads into the dress code, you could say. So I think we've already answered this question, but you could say the dress code definitely can vary between both here and Japan.
Yeah, it's just a very like simple look from outside, but deep inside, if you really work in a Japanese company, how much thing that you like I really need to care about. It's more than just a dress code. How you communicate with people, what kind of manners that you should have. I worked in my company in Japan before. That's a big, large company. It's like international company, but also it's very traditional company, long times, more than 100 years. I work in a corporate strategy department where I work with top people like board member. I'm not really working talking with them much, but actually I'm in the back office. But I can see like people working around. They have to be very careful manner. Like for example, you see someone in Japan, people will nod and bow. And depending on your title, like if you are big title, they will bow more. Or if you are a customer, they bow more and more. Deep down.
I see. So you're
Deep
saying
down.
there's much more of a sense of like ceremony and like proper ways of like presenting yourself and holding yourself depending on the seniority of the person.
So the way they show is I'm modest and I show respect to you and I bow deep. That means you are much. I I make you higher
Yeah, like the
than yeah.
hierarchy in the company that
Right.
I see.
Yes.
So that kind of and that, like you said, that also can affect the communication manner. So like how you both body language and also how you communicate. I'm sure. So like kind of going off that, are there certain ways you had to communicate with higher level people versus maybe mid level and lower level people? Like I
Mm.
mean, communication is communication, but from what you're saying, I'm sure there are maybe different ways you should go about communicating.
People really care about it in the way. Like I have one example that's very funny. Like especially for girl has to be careful more about all the excellent manner that we actually have. So my company actually hired one famous person on TV. She worked for NHK TV, News TV. So she came to my company and she actually teach us how to smile, how many teeth you need to show when you smile, and what kind of impression, what kind of image that you will like other people will see, and how much people will remember you based on how you smile. So they really detail like that.
Wow, I mean, I can see them maybe coming to kind of give you hints about how to be more recognizable and maybe memorable, but how many teeth to show? That seems a bit extreme in my opinion. My goodness.
So, like for example, the best smile, like you want to show 1, 2, 3, 4 on the right, 1, 2, 3, 4 on the left, something like that. It's just the funniest um, example showing that they really care about every single thing. Like when I'm in a meeting, I can't really put my one leg on each other or my elbow on the table and my hand on his cheek like this. It just has to be look nice and no, can't do like that.
So you
And
can say posture is very important. The right
posture, yeah,
posture is very important. None of the
yes,
you know elbow on the table
yeah.
or both elbows on the table or leaning back in your chair. Like, gotcha.
Right. Yes. Yeah. People are very polite. Like even at work, people say yes more than say no.
That is one thing I've noticed in both China and Taiwan, and in many places, the politeness is a huge factor. It's like there's a big hesitance in ever saying I can't do something or no. It's more maybe they can't really do it, but they'll try to find a way
Mm,
around saying no
yes.
directly.
Yeah. Maybe they just don't want to hurt other feeling, or maybe they're just trying to be more subtle when they express opinions. Like in America, for me, somehow it's help when you say yes or no, then I don't know exactly what you want. But over there, they will say yes all the time, but like pay attention to the next sentence that they will say.
It's as you
Yeah,
could
I
say,
will
the
think about it later
details.
or somehow. That means no.
Yeah, it's like that's a good point. It's like they may never say no, but like you said, listen to what they say after they say yes, and by the
Mm,
tone or the intonation or their body language, you can say, "Oh, yeah, they can't really do this," or "Oh, no, no, they can do this."
yeah.
And
So instead of like America is more direct, they really trying to say like around a little bit different way and trying to create harmony. It's very rare to see someone speak out against general consensus. For example, when you're in a meeting, someone say something but like you have a different opinions on an idea that may be a great idea, but they will not talk. Yeah.
yeah, and I think that's another difference, kind of going into like the kind of when you're in a meeting or you're discussing something. Is I find that in
Mm,
the U.S. people are very open and comfortable about sharing their ideas or input. And
yes.
what I noticed in China, it's not the same, but is that people never really do that unless they're like requested to.
Correct. Especially when you have a meeting with multiple people, like for example, me and my boss and other bigger boss or other department. Normally, I would just keep silence. Or when my boss asks me a question, I will tell him. But if my boss says something wrong and I know it, I will not say anything. I'm not allowed to say something when in front of someone bigger than my boss. Yeah.
Yeah, I think here it does happen, but I think sometimes people, depending on the meeting or the situation, they may not directly tell their boss you're wrong. They may use some other way to kind of hint that hey, you're not saying the
Mm,
right thing. And I definitely agree with you on that. And there has to be it has to be a little uncomfortable sometimes, and you're like, oh, he's saying something wrong, but I can't really do anything. But yeah, that's just interesting. All like the nuances and the just the rituals, the ceremony, the communication styles. I think that's one thing a lot of people in America and the West, they kind of when they think of like Japan, they think of it's just much more formal and like stylized in a way.
right.
Where here it's much
Right.
more casual, and I think a lot of people they know it, but they don't know all these specific details like the teeth. That's like who would have thought show four teeth on the right, show four teeth on the left. I mean, who would think of something like that? But yeah, but that's great. But moving on into more of kind of like the tasks at work, we got like everyone writes emails, but I've noticed working with typing it with international people I've worked with, sometimes email formats and how they
Mm.
structure their emails are different. So kind of going into email and then like reports and meetings, which we've touched on, like how would you describe the different, are there any big differences there or are they rather similar, would you say?
Let's talk about task or email, maybe two things that I really see the difference. One is privacy. Well, America is more privacy. Why in Japan, like every single email I send it out to people, my boss emails always copying it, even I know it or not.
I see.
That mean, which is a good thing. That mean, like I always have someone to check for me work I do, and always I have to report to my manager the work I've done. So that's a good thing. That maybe I make mistakes somehow somewhere, meaning that I always have to keep my manager in the loop. When in America, it's not that. It's
Oh,
not
for
happening
sure,
that way.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I would say like they're the emails. You definitely include your manager, your assistant manager, or whoever else, and then there are a lot of cases where it's just you and someone else. You don't even have to worry about it, and you may bring it up in a meeting or on a call with the boss, but it's not, you don't necessarily have to include them unless it's usually they're just different types of things you have to, and then the ones you don't have to. But in your case, you're saying Japan, it doesn't matter who you're emailing, you're always CCing your boss or someone above you.
And another thing, in email in US here, normally people will say very simple thing like just say focus on exactly the question that other people ask. When in Japan, it's very formal. I can say it's formal for everything, even in email. Like an email, the shortest one is like half of the page, but the information you need maybe just several words or maybe one sentence. So what do they say in that half of the page? Hello, dear someone in a company, or what position that they work on, especially if they are positioned like managers, and we have to call them like manager in that email all the time.
So
like
you can say titles are very important in your emails. You can't just
right.
say, whereas here a lot of times you can call your boss by the first name if they let you. Gotcha.
Yeah, people always call last name. That's the first thing, last name, and plus something like mean Mr. or Mrs. or very high, like make them higher position more than you, like that. That's that kind of idea.
You can say acknowledging their position, is very important in the email.
Yeah, and then you introduce yourself, and always there's some type of word that are always included in the email. For example, say in Japanese, like for someone in the same company, you say "otsukaresama desu." That means "otsukaresama desu" mean like it's good to work with you and you work hard.
You can say like you have to include a formality. There's a formality you have to
include some of the thing, or maybe when I email my customers, always have to say like "お世話になっております," meaning like thank you for your business and your business contribute to my success story. So something like that. Always show gratitude to people.
So you could say an emphasis on displaying gratitude and appreciation are essential.
Yes. Yeah. But that's a very long email, and sometimes some word that you don't even need to read, but it's always in there.
Yeah, just opposed to some of the emails that I send people I work with all the time. I'm just like, thanks a lot, I appreciate it, done. Just because you know the person so well, and they if you did that, they're like, hey, we work together all the time. You don't need to do all this. I know you're a good client or a good whatever, but yeah, that's definitely a difference.
Yeah. Like even here in America, for me, it took me for like maybe 2 years to get used to it.
Oh, I'm sure that definitely had to be an adjustment.
I'm so surprised that I call people here is always just only first name, and even my company president or anyone or even my manager, like, is that really rude, or I have to show respect somehow, like Mr. or Mrs. But no, people say no need, just first name. It's more casual, and I like it now.
Yeah, I find that it's like it's nice to have formalities, but sometimes when you have that more casual attitude, it makes you more relaxed. You're not always afraid you're going to make a mistake. So I think that is one element I do like. I mean, the formality is important for me, but personally, I think a balance is important. And that kind of leads on to kind of like you said, reports and meetings. So we've kind of touched on meetings with the formalities, but would you say that meetings are held in the same way like they are here in the U.S., or would you say they're different?
It's kind of different again.
Okay.
So meeting, you can see the Japanese people have so many meetings instead of in America. And the way they present information too. So that's kind of related to two things. One is they have so much prepared before they come to the meeting with making so many different like material. Elon Musk or CEO Amazon, Jeff, they do not recommend Bezos, people using PowerPoint presentation, right? But in America, that's in Japan, it's totally different. Like almost all workers in Japan I know, they are so good at Microsoft Office. They make very nice document. It's just because they have to do it a lot, and have to change and document the thing. So because of that, it take more time. And meeting in Japan have special meaning is about nemawashi. So
Mamashi.
nemawashi meaning like before you decide something, you're actually asking around people. Like OU is not perfect. You got to ask other people what other people think and combine all that together and what's the best decision.
I see. So you could
So
say like they want a consensus, like a complete
yes,
consensus amongst the group. So more a comprehensive look at everything. That's nice. I like that idea. Or that's a good
yeah,
approach in my opinion.
but because of that, it takes so long somehow. In America, another thing I like is America makes fast decision based on information and the fact available at that time. When Japan, they have to do more research and research, and is this best solution? Is this best? This works somehow, but somehow it's not work. Especially from what I'm doing right now when I doing sell some of the automated component to my customer. Whenever my customer asking me for quote, the standard lead time that they want me to answer to them is like at least like 1 week or maybe 2 weeks. For me, I always make them happy, so I really want to. I always respond within 1 day or 2 day, or like when I can get information. But making a quote is not something simple that only me can decide. So I have to ask a lot of my manager and everyone, and somehow it can be slow, but I understand that like Japanese culture, they really prefer some perfectionism or quality, trying to minimize errors or trying to make consistency in their decision. But somehow if it takes so long, we're gonna lose like the chance opportunity, because if I'm a customer, I'm not gonna wait forever for someone to have an answer. I want to see, oh, you are quick, you are fast, and you cheap. You are have a competitive price, so I'm going to choose you
So you could say they
instead of
want to
waiting for someone.
they're more it's more of a perfectionist mentality. They want to make sure everything's
Yes,
perfect, but because
right.
of that, it cuts down on efficiency and response time, which can, let's face it, a lot of customers they're impatient
Sometimes,
and
yes,
sometimes they're just like, okay, this is too long. I'm gonna go with someone else who's faster, as you
right.
mentioned. But no, that's
Mm.
an interesting. But I like, yeah, it's a great idea in theory, but in practice, I could see what you said where it can get a little frustrating.
And one more thing actually I like in America also too is people welcome any idea. That mean create more creativity. Like anyone can generate idea, even they are not a boss manager or just a normal person. And I really like that kind of brainstorm thing, especially in this world when things changing so much.
Oh, I completely agree, and that's one thing that I see
Mhm.
in my job all the time, and it's very refreshing to get different
Mm.
ideas. Yeah, it can be sometimes you can go around the room a bit, but it's just good to hear everyone's advice or ideas because a lot of times, let's face it, one mind's not going to think of everything 20 or five minds would think of, depending on how many people you work with.
So I work in a Japanese company in US. So somehow I only have to combine both of them. Like I don't want to waste so long time waiting. So instead of that, I'm gonna go around and ask people, ask different department, and gather all the information and everything, what possibility that may have, or what kind of outcome, or what's the worst case scenario, and be very prepared before I go to the meeting and then done in that meeting. That's how combine two different culture
Well,
somehow
and
to get
that's
things done
and
fast.
history has shown that sometimes hybridization of different models is what works the best. You take the best of both, but at the same time, you can inherit the worst of both. But by combining them, you can compare and contrast and see what works. And that leads us into another element is like the amount of hours you work, and then what work life is like versus your personal life. Because you mentioned specifically that work and personal life in Japan are very separate, whereas in the U.S. it's also separate, but I feel sometimes they tend to overlap at times.
Okay, so two things in your question here. Work
Mm-hmm.
hour. I think you see so many articles about talking about Japanese people work so long hour, right?
Oh yes, all
And
the
I
time.
think
Seen many documentaries and news things about people literally working themselves into oblivion.
right. So even have something that people work until death. That's very sad thing to hear, but that actually happened.
Yes,
So
that's so sad because I've saw some news articles about people who committed suicide because they just couldn't take the work hours, and it was so sad.
but actually, Japan is changing a lot now. It still have something like that happen, but they're trying to change, and they like, especially my company in Japan, they have some policy. Like for example, at 7 o'clock, company will have announce overall like it's 7 o'clock, everyone should go home. Or like at 10 o'clock, we're gonna close everything, turn off the lights, and you have to go home. Or they're gonna limit it the work hour by like give you maximum this much. But have you ever think why people in Japan working that long?
Well, I think it's a number of reasons. I think it's partly just work culture. Another thing would be is projects, tasks, when they get things done, pressure. I think it
Mm.
can include a wide range of reasons. Those are just a few that I can think of offhand based on what knowledge I have about it.
Right. So that two thing is very much about it, about culture. If their work still there, and if you see someone still working, normally people feel guilty if they go home. So they normally stay and work. I see someone say too, like, get your boss there and you have to stay there. Well, it's maybe true in some situation, and my company is not. So my company, my boss still normally stay until all the worker going home. So that means you don't have to wait for your boss, but actually your boss wait for you.
Ah,
Right?
yeah, in my job, I would say my director and associate director, they're usually the last two to finish in the day. I mean, we all finish around the same time, but if there's more work to do, they will continue to do more work.
Right. I don't really think that Japanese people have to work that much, especially it in America here. I don't see the reason why people have to work that much because they still have another life. But unfortunately, in Japan, I can see a lot of people, even in my department before, they have to commute 2 hours to work and commute back 2 hours home.
Oh, that's
Uh,
terrible.
yeah. So almost every day that they never really see their children until weekend, like when you left, when you leave the house, the children still sleep. When you go home, they already sleep. So almost like no time. Daddy like never really spend time with kids, and like
That's
that's not right.
unfortunate, yeah, because let's say you factor in a standard work, work day is consistent of 8 hours or whatever, and then if you have 2 hours to get to work and 2 hours to go home, that's that's 12 hours right there, just including work and commute time. So that's
Right. So in America here, I also read some article about American people also work long hour. Do you think so?
it depends. Yes, I think it depends on the job and the industry and the person. Like some people, like I myself, I'm very work driven. So if I really want to get something done, I'll put a little extra time to get something done. Other people are not like that, but it also depends on what type of like if your salary, hourly, things like that. So if you're salary, there's you still have to get stuff done, but there's not motivation to work beyond the hours you're in your contract because you're not going to be compensated for them. And sometimes some companies won't let you do it because they don't want to pay overtime or whatever. Whereas if you're hourly or perhaps a contract employer, independent contractor, there's more incentive to continue to work more hours because you'll continue to get more payment for it. So I think it really just depends. But generally speaking, people don't tend to work more, unless you're struggling and having one, two, or three jobs, which unfortunately a lot of people do have. Like if you're a college student, I was a college kid. I had three jobs at one point while I was a college student. But I think it really depends. But once you get into like a career, it can vary. There's no right or wrong answer. It just depends on who you talk to and what industry they're in and what's going on at any given time with their job.
Yeah, I also see that aspect too. Like I don't know if it's right or wrong, but I see American worker like normally for us, the salary member, we normally go home at 5 o'clock. Why Japanese people still stay there. For hourly worker, yes, they have some incentive, but like you say, maybe it's a little bit different here. When I think personally, in America, people really in debt so much.
Yes,
Maybe like after they graduate
yeah,
when they
college.
have
Yeah,
finished student
college debt
loan
is a huge
something.
issue. So yeah, college debt is a huge issue overall, and a lot of people are very eager to try to reduce that debt. It's not in college debt, credit card debt, if they have a house. So debt is very common across the population here. How much each person has that varies, but generally people come out of college generally have at least some debt. I have friends that have anywhere between $20,000 and $100,000 in student loan debt, which is just to me is nuts. And most of my friends from overseas, I tell them that they like pass out in horror.
So that's one of the reasons that I think people here have to work too much. It's just because they have to pay off the debt, the student loan, or maybe here is like really a market culture. Like people buying house, buying car, all that money from the bank. When in Asia, actually, in Vietnam or in Japan, people don't really rely on the bank that much, or maybe just trying to have a saving first, and then they buy it, like even buy a house or car or other things. And especially tuition over there is not that expensive, so it's not really some burden
Exactly. You
at
bring up
all.
an excellent point there. Americans are very much a consumption consumer culture. Buy now, like,
Mm-hmm.
enjoy the good life now, everything. Whereas in China or other places, I know it's much more save your money. Still live a life, but don't go extreme. You don't need a great, you don't need this, you don't need that. I mean, granted, there are exceptions to the rules everywhere, but I would say my mentality is a little more along those lines, and not with most Americans, I would say, because I save as much as I can, and I try to live more of a simplistic lifestyle. But that is definitely a difference, I would say, is people here. I hate to generalize, but generally they're more eager to acquire more assets or more things, or I'd say liabilities, because they're just accumulating, and they'll use credit. Credit is very popular here, whereas credit is not nearly as popular in Asia, from my experience.
Yeah, so back to the point about work hour for Japan. One thing I can see is in Japan, like during daytime, whenever I reach out to them and ask them something, they always make themselves available for us, for me. That they're trying to solve all the problem and helping others. And then after the daytime, they stay home, they stay longer out in there to trying to do another work. They finish their work. So that means whenever I ask them doing something, they're going to do it until the end. That I don't really have to follow up with them a lot of time. And because of that, they're willing to do more for people, and they have to work more to make sure that they finish all their work. So that's the good things about it. But another thing is I can see that a lot of people stay there and work there during the day, and at night they're trying to spend more time, like from 5 after hour to 9 o'clock, just stay in the company and study more some more thing. So to show that I'm working hard, I have a good attitude, so my boss will like it. And there's a funny story about in Japan, people really make the rule so much rule that you have to go home early. They make it a premium Friday. That means premium Friday is the first day that everyone has to go home at 5 o'clock. But there's a statistics that first premium Friday, only 4% of Japanese workers go home early. So
well, that's certainly not abided by much, but the statistics there just show that.
Yes. So that means people really say that I don't want to be the first person to go home early when other people are still there. So really, that's a part of culture. That's the main point.
Gotcha. No, all very, very interesting thing. And that also kind of brings us into the next element, would be kind of like the corporate business culture and like the human development companies. Like, companies, they say, their employees are a company's strongest asset, is what we would say here. And it can be clearly seen some companies invest in their employees where others don't. And there are many things that can contribute to that. So to break it down, so corporate business culture, you would say, is what, and then investment in employees is what?
Yeah, so majority of Japanese company, if you see the slogan, they will say that our employee is the most important asset. That means they invest in people, in human skill. So there is one story here. After I graduated MBA here, before that I trying to look for a job, and I went to one of their career fair, a job fair in San Francisco with all the Japanese company there. And they interviewed me and they talked with me. It's just random thing. And they given me an offer doing IT job, like computer job. While my background and everything, I learned economics. I do not know much about IT. But that
so I'm sure you were like scratching your head like, oh, okay.
As long as you see the bright side in you, or maybe they see the good attitude, or maybe you work hard, you have potential, they hire you and they're willing to invest in you for 1 and 2 years to teach you all the skill they need, and then you work for them forever. So Japanese company, they really look for long-term relationship, long-term commitment, work for them long time, and not really like jumping to other.
So you could say their mindset in acquiring new employees is long term. It's like, maybe they don't care as much about how much you know now as much as, oh, you seem to have a good personality, you seem to have a good attitude, you want to learn. That's all we need. We can give you what you need to make you successful, to make us successful.
Yes, it's not 100% like that.
Of course,
especially when you hire, like for young employee, they're willing to invest in you and teach you unlimited knowledge. Why in America here, when I see, like when we hire people, you're supposed to have some skill or experience needed to do the job.
Yeah, I will say, coming out of grad school and looking for jobs, it's like, I was just telling myself, how do you expect people to have years of experience when you're coming out of an undergrad or graduate degree, and you've only worked maybe you've had an assistantship or you've had an internship, but it's like, I find a lot of it is very unrealistic, and sometimes I've heard of people getting hired and they got hired and didn't have that. I'm like, what? So I honestly do think that that's a little overkill in my opinion, because it really cuts off a lot of people who are very qualified candidates, but they just don't have the experience. So I do think there's a bit of a discrepancy and a bit of problem there that I think should be addressed. I think, yeah, experience is important, but you have to have an opportunity to gain experience before you can show you have it. So it's just like, cause and effect.
Yeah, and I actually somehow I also like the way that American really like do it yourself, learn yourself, and try to learn fast and excel at skill very fast. So that's a good thing too. Like if you qualify for the job, that will be easier and much saving time instead of like spending a lot of time to change you, to like to give you training. So that's a good thing too. But Japan, because of they invest in you so much, that means you owe them something. That you mean whenever you do work every day, you really think about group first instead of individual first. Every single decision, like for me, for example, even me, I'm here when I work in America here, but I'm gonna do this job because this is a good for company, not just for me. Why maybe in America, people will really think more about I do this because it's good for my career, my own career, my own future for development, personal development, something like that.
No, I definitely agree.
So
I think there's much more of a, it's collective versus individualism, where the U.S. really promotes individualism. I mean, collectivism is important, but we're definitely very big proponents of individualism. And, maybe you're the one that can bring change, not necessarily the group or however you want to call it, where in Asia I find it's more group consensus versus just the individual. But yeah, and that also
yeah,
brings into another interesting point would be is one thing that is kind of, I think, become more widespread about or widely known as like the criticism culture.
this is really interesting to see how different it is. Like in America, I can see you were born and raised in the way that people give you so much compliments, like, oh, you're doing great. So that means the kids have more confidence to do something and have more motivation to do something, right?
Yes,
But in
like I would
yeah,
say is that, yeah, I mean, depending on your parenting and depending on the background of your family, a number of factors beyond that, you're definitely praised a lot. But I know, at least in my case growing up, I definitely, if I did something wrong, I was told. I mean, they weren't shy in telling me, but I definitely gained a lot of confidence because when I did things right, I definitely was told. I was told, and that was
mm,
expressed to me. But at the same time, if I did something wrong, it was also clearly expressed to me. But that's not everybody. It just depends. But yes, I have noticed that Americans have a much higher level of confidence than many people I've met in China, for example, or other places.
yeah, and that actually a very good thing to bring confidence to a person. However, it's just different culture history in America here in Japan in the way that in Japan, people will focus more on something that you have not done well and how to improve that. So at work, we have the term hansei, mean
Say,
reflection.
a
Like
reflection.
after you've
Okay.
done anything, you always review it, what you've done right, what you've done wrong. And somehow, if it's too negative, like if you just only focus on something you do wrong, that means people will lose confidence or motivation for next step, right?
Oh, for
So
sure. I find that I think that's very draining for individuals. No matter how strong they are, it's draining over time mentally.
yeah, so for me, I see in both viewpoint, like I just wish there's a combination somewhere between the both culture. Like you really recognize someone doing good job, but at the same time give people really constructive criticism. Like this is something how you do it. One thing is not we're not really focused on personal thing. This is about work and this aspect of work. If we can do this better, that will be perfect, or something like that.
And I think that goes to the bigger
Yeah.
point is that, it's finding a balance is important. You need to know what you need to improve, but at the same
Mm,
time, you need to be given confirmation and assurance, and I'd say praise for what you do well for a healthy balance. It should neither should be you can't have you can't have either extreme. You need to have more of a balance, and I think
right.
that produces a much more balanced individual who can deal with criticism, but at the same time they also don't overly are not overly confident and think, oh, I can do anything, no one can tell me anything. It's that finite balance, I think, is important.
Right. So good thing is in Japan, they already know that culture. So they're always showing positive feeling at work instead of showing negative, like I'm mad and I'm not like that. No, they will never showing in front of you. They hiding feeling very well.
Yeah, that's something
But
I've noticed as well. It's like whenever I've done business, they're always going. Everything is always positive, even if it's not. When you're talking,
yes,
it's always positive.
right. But if Japanese company apply that rule to in America that way, when people not get used to it, they will get shocked. Like really, you question my a skill and qualification or something like that.
Yeah,
So
if you did
that's
that
really
to a large number of Americans, they would not be, a lot of them would not be shy in saying "excuse me," or being
yeah,
more like, "Okay, I know I need to prove,
right.
but you don't need to throw this in my face" or something like
Mm,
that. But yeah, but that is very interesting, and kind of like how people deal with criticism, and how should criticism be dealt out. I'm a firm believer that objective criticism is important. It's like you're criticized, but not negatively. You're criticized because I want you to improve.
yeah.
And I think that's very important. Yeah, and that also brings into another really key point is company benefit. So like in the U.S., as you know, since you work here, you get a job and you get a salary. You can maybe get a retirement plan, like a 401k, maybe a pension if you're very lucky, or something along those lines. Is it similar? I imagine it's similar in Japan, or maybe almost identical.
Japan and US is same for that pension. Like in America here, we have a 1K. Over there, they also have like they call nenkin,
Okay.
like the money that you receive after you retire.
Oh yeah, like
Um,
basically like in a way like Social
right,
Security here from
same.
the government, but or if you work for a company like the military or a government, you can get a pension. So you can
Mhm.
say a pension.
The only thing is, I like insurance plan over there better. For somehow America insurance and medical insurance is so expensive.
Oh, don't get me started on that. I mean, I've talked to
And
my
we
foreign
can
friends
talk
about.
like 15 more minutes about
Oh,
it,
I
but
know.
like,
Oh, I know. And
yeah.
I've talked to my foreign friends sometimes about like how much I pay for for healthcare and stuff, and it's not bad by U.S. standards, but they're like, that's expensive. And I tell them about some of my other friends, and they literally like have a heart attack. Yeah,
Yes, like over there, literally when you go to the doctor, you just pay only $20 and you can get any kind of treatment. Children free for when they go to see the doctor.
that's awesome. That's
And
just awesome.
yes, that makes the lifestyle over there so much better, easier for someone to have kids. For example, my kids go to daycare over there. It's only $400 per month for two kids. When in here, if you have two kids, it'll go.
That's nothing.
It's gonna be maybe 1,300 or something more than that.
I have a friend who
So
owns a daycare, and she told me what their rates are, and I thought they were expensive, and she said, "Oh no, we're cheap. We get a lot of people because we're cheaper," and I'm just like, "Oh my god."
but it's not about company benefit. Over there, they give to you a lot of kind of allowance. Like if people go by train and go to work a lot in Japan, right? Because
Hmm.
public transportation is
Mass
very
transit, yeah,
popular.
mass transit.
Yes, so they give you allowance. They pay for their train ticket every day, almost.
Oh, that's awesome. So literally, like they
Yes,
basically they give their workers like like you said, an allowance just for commuting to work.
right.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's nice.
and something nice thing that I really like is company have should be location like hotel for employee only. So you can go there and stay in like 3-4 star hotel with just $10 for whole family whole day, or they have a good connection with some kind of like chain hotel, good hotel, then you can have a good vacation with your family there. So that's something.
Yeah, I
Um,
think there are some similarities here in the U.S. Like I know if you work for some of the hotel chains here in the U.S., you
mm,
get major discounts, but that's pretty nice because most companies don't really have. I can't think of a direct equal comparison there. You'd have to be if you're more in a specific niche
yeah.
work sector, or if you work for a certain hotel chain or certain or travel companies, then you get something. But that's nice. I mean, literally, it's like that'd be awesome if we got like every month we got X amount of money just to drive to and from work. I'd love that. I mean, that's awesome. I'm jealous.
Yeah, some other activity that I really like too, it's not company benefit, but you have an unlimited chance to connect with other people, especially my company is Toyota Roshik Group, so that's a part of Toyota.
Hmm.
Like other Toyota company, other Toyota Group company, we also have a same department, like corporate strategy department. So corporate strategy department in my company and other Toyota company also hang out together, like
So you can
to
see there's
learn
a
about each other.
large number of
Yes,
opportunities for networking and
right.
building
Networking is
relationships.
very good. We even have some club, like someone walking club, maybe mountain climbing club,
I
and
think
ski
I
club,
think
and
I think that is
yeah.
translatable here in the U.S. For certain jobs and industries. But yeah, but that is still really nice to have all these
Mm,
additional opportunities, activities, or just things you can do with your coworkers in more of a relaxed environment where you can talk, social, network, and just that's really nice because, as they say, it's who you know. They can get you a lot
Yeah,
of places these days.
I think that's a very important activity for because the majority of the time during work hour, I don't see people talk about personal stuff at all. They just talk about work. That's it. So that's why they have to hang out after work hour to know more about other people, like know more about personal life to make it easy or maybe better relationship. Why in America here, like I don't know, but people here we have a really fun time together and even people laughing a lot, like talking about personal thing or maybe talk about sports, TV and news event and people laugh together, laugh like very different. So
Yeah, I mean, work parties sometimes, like Christmas parties. There's all kinds of things you can do. Like our work, yeah. I mean, sometimes we have meetings, and we'll say and just chat for a few minutes about how's life and everything. Not always, but it's definitely more laid back, and that is nice. And that kind of leads us into our last couple of set of questions for the episode today. And that would be the first one would be is if for some reason, let's say an American wants to go over to Japan or a non-Japanese, for example, what do Japanese company expect from a foreign candidate, or in this case, an American candidate, if they wanted to join the company in Japan, for example?
good question. So Japanese people when they hire employee, they look for what your background is, like where you graduate, how qualified you are, like what kind of skill and experience you have. But another very important thing is they will see how you're going to fit with the corporate culture they have, like what kind of personality you are, how you're willing to devote yourself to grow, how you're trying to get into the group or more like think about group more than individual. So that's what they're looking for too.
I see. So
So if
they want to see
yeah,
how adaptable you are. Maybe they may hire you maybe for a different, because you're bringing something foreign into the company that they maybe can
mm,
use, but at the same time they want to make sure that they know you're not going to be like you're not going to completely go, let's say buy into that completely or be that way, but enough where things can function smoothly and that you can
right.
and that makes sense. That makes total sense. Well, just like American companies hire foreign candidates for a whole host of reasons. Whether it's their experience, their education, what they can bring, different points of view. Those are all things that can be considered. And I'm sure the Japanese companies also look at, they hired you, for example, you're from Vietnam and they hired you. You know, that's all. I think and that also can very much vary on what type of company it is, big or smaller. If it's local, regional or international.
It's very interesting from my own experience. My company hired me when my boss interviewed me. So after 2 years later, he told me that I hire you because the story that you told us, even when I go to have I go to hospital to have a baby, I'm still listening to the phone and I'm still make sure that things go right.
Oh, that's
It's just kind of a joke, but
so you could say that
like,
sold him on your dedication. He was like, "Wow, she's dedicated."
yes, like I'm trying to make sure that if someone really gives to me a task, something it has to be done right though, and trying to make sure that follow up from beginning to the end and everything done good. Like they don't have to question me and follow up with me. If you give it to me, that means it's gonna be good.
That,
Yeah.
that's quite a
That's
story,
what
and that's certainly something that I think that would stick in any supervisor or boss's mind if you said that. No, that's really neat. And then getting a little on time for the night, but our last question would be is kind of you could say simply is like from what your experience, how did Japanese companies change when they move or go internationally? Like maybe they're still based in Japan, but they have like satellite offices like the one you work in.
yeah, so Japanese company depend on company, but like company like mine, they have changed a lot and a lot of them successful, some still need work, but majority is they more open to idea and communication. Like Japanese people is very conservative some point. They make decision by their own. They still have their own group to make decision, but now they listen more to foreign people, especially from America, because we know that Japanese people cannot successful without local people support. Like whatever you knowledgeable you are, but local people will understand more about local market than you. So combine together with that, understand the culture and listen to local voice will make them more successful.
And I think that's very much common
And
sense because anytime you move into a new market and new clients, new customers, new you know a new area, you have to adapt. And I think that's
Right.
what you're getting at, that they are understanding that they have to adapt and that they can't use the same model they use in Japan in the US just because of all the factors we discussed this evening. But I think
Right.
that's important. But I've noticed that sometimes companies don't do that, and then that really
Mm.
can either they'll fail completely in that market, or it'll cause a huge problem until they actually do something to try to take those factors into consideration.
There's something that I really still want to keep. For example, Toyota, like my company, we're trying to make sure things under control, like really design work. It's gonna be in Japan. Like they want to make sure everything
So
is
there's
completely the
I
way
see. So
that
they
they
want to
want it.
retain like the design, or they want to retain certain parts of the company or certain tasks and things like
Right.
that. They want to keep that in Japan. That makes sense. I mean, I can
Yes.
understand that in one
The
sense.
operation standpoint is they will more like hand over to local manager like that. And so that's how open they need to be to change, to adapt a new environments. Another way is the culture, like in Japanese culture, like I just said about Hansei culture, the reflection. How do people approach how to give a construction like constructive criticism to make people really change and improve, and how do they apply some of the rule, like for example Toyota, we have the TPS, the Toyota production system.
Mm-hmm.
How do they apply the thinking, like approve, like continuously kaizen, continuously improve that way to make things better every day? That's how they apply those rules to American production or manufacturing system. They've done very successful, but that's something that really we see things going, we adapt, we change ourselves, change like Japanese people, they change themselves to
No,
make it
that's
better.
great. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think adaptability. I think is one of the most important skills people have, and especially me and you having lived in outside of our home countries, I think we both will agree that is very important, both in work and life. Adaptability and being able to take on new things, new ideas, but maintaining your sense of yourself and your skills and abilities. That's a very important balance you have to maintain.
Right. One thing is about decision making, like we mentioned earlier,
Mm-hmm.
they got to be quick.
Yes.
Fast and quick.
Very true. Very true. Very true. Well, it's been a great discussion this evening. I've learned quite a bit, and I think it's really interesting, kind of going through these individual areas of comparison one by one and breaking them down. And at the end of the day, there's still a lot of similarities because we're all humans. We all have the same functions, capacities, and business is business. Companies are companies, but a lot of the nuances and the specific things, like your wonderful example of how many teeth to show, that just shows like how many unique situations, or like just how do I say it, aspects that can define one culture's business culture compared to another. So it's been great talking to you this evening, and I really been very insightful, and I really appreciate the time you've taken to join the episode this evening and share your experiences with us.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my experience, and I hope this podcast, what I share today, will be helpful. Anyone who's looking for working with Japanese company.
Well, I'm quite sure it is, because you've provided a lot of good information and tips, advice, and if anyone's interested in working in Japan, just listen to this episode, and that might be your first step in doing some research on the potential opportunity in pursuing that. But we just want to thank everyone for attending tonight. This has been another episode of International Immersion, and we will see you on the next episode. And let's hope COVID ends soon so we can get back out there and keep on traveling and exploring the world and continue to learn. Thank you, and take care.
Thank you.